Alright folks, so I'm going to go ahead and work on replacing the bearing in this generator head. One of the first things I kind of did here was get my tools organized. And sorry, I'm recording this from my phone. My other camera is out of batteries and I need to go get some, and I haven't done it yet. But you know, when I was having generator problems the other day, my tools were all scattered everywhere. I'm just hunting for everything, so I decided to take 20 minutes and organize it all. I think that's an important part of prepping, is keeping your tools organized so that you can fix stuff fast. So I've taken off this orange cover that was on the side. There's two bolts that hold that in. This is the bearing under here that I think is the culprit. And in order to get to this, you got to take all these bolts out. I've taken the top two bolts here out. I have to take this muffler bolt here out. And then, rather than trying to disconnect all these wires, I found it's easier to leave them connected when you pull this back segment out. And then just take this front panel off. So I've already taken the two bolts here out. There's two bolts at the other end. And then there's a couple wires for the switch that you have to disconnect. But other than that, everything else comes right out with the generator head, and that way you're not unhooking a bunch of wires. And then I will show you, when I get this part off, what this looks like inside. Pretty quickly here, what you have is a bridge rectifier here, which takes a little bit of alternating current as the generator head spins up, and converts that to DC to energize the field coils. And I bet you that these plugs right here, these DC plugs, probably also come off of that rectifier, although I'm not sure. But I know that these rectifiers commonly go bad, and the generator just won't produce any electricity. Well, you go down and get you a 20 amp bridge rectifier from your local electronics store or Radio Shack. Radio Shack does have bridge rectifiers. However, I have found that when you walk in the door and they go, "You need a cell phone? You got questions? We got cell phones." And you're like, "I'm looking for the bridge rectifiers." They're like, "What?" So, but they're in little drawers in the back with electronic components. Although they may not know what they are, because they just really they only teach the salespeople there, I think, how to sell cell phones now. But yeah, that's a real common problem. And in a future video, I'll get a bridge rectifier out and show you how to test this, because all this really is 4 diodes. You could actually build one out of 4 diodes, but it wouldn't be, this is heat sunk back to this nice chunk of aluminum so it can handle more current. Okay, I will update you once I get this generator head off of here. Okay, so I have removed the stator assembly. That is down here. And you just gotta kind of take that all off in one piece. Even though the back cover kind of comes loose from the middle part, it is hooked together with wires. And so now here is my rotor that is hooked to the engine. And you're like, how in the world does that come off? And no, it's not this bolt right here. In fact, I'm not sure why they even put that bolt on there. Although you might be able to put a washer under it, maybe help hold that bearing more flush. The bearing's not really wobbling, but what I can tell is there's some scorch marks on the outside of it. So it has been getting heated up, and this outer part's been doing some turning. And it feels, even though it's not grindy, it feels dry. So, like, I think when it gets to turning for a while, that heats up. Like I said, this is a sealed bearing. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at it. It doesn't really look like one that can be lubricated real easy either. But anyway, so now we have to get this off of here, being careful not to damage our rotor assembly, which has all the wiring and stuff on it. This was a bit of a challenge last time. I'm going to kind of play with it here. Last time what I had to do literally was hammer this bearing, and then the outer part came apart and slid off, and then I was able to take a bench grinder and just grind this inner part off. But the way you get these out of here, you're probably wondering, like, how do I get this off the side of the engine? It took me a little while to figure it out the first time, but you actually hit it down sideways like so, and then hit it up a couple times, and it'll actually, that'll pop off there. It's pressure fit, and I'll show you once I get it off how that works. Okay, folks, I lied. I said that bolt does nothing. It actually does. It's a long one. This does go all the way back into the engine to hold this on. However, it usually still won't come off, and that's what confused me the last time. And what you actually have to do is tap it side to side a few times. I'll see if I can get it here. And once you do that, let me go ahead and tap on it some more. But once you tap it, like, side to side, when I can use both hands, it'll be a little easier. Then that actually pops off, and I'll show you how it's beveled in there and pressure fitted. Okay, folks, I don't know how well you can see it, but that's actually the output shaft coming off this is beveled, and then this is also beveled, and that just fits over that bevel. And then when you tighten that bolt down, the whole thing pressure fits over there, and that's friction right there is what keeps it spinning. Although I'm not sure why they quite do it that way. My guess might be so that if this generator head does lock up, it doesn't catastrophically fail the engine, that it may go ahead and slip before it breaks the crankshaft. But anyway, I'm going to try to get this bearing now off of the end of this without damaging it and see what I can do. Alright, folks, so I've ground off the outer sleeve of the bearing with the trusty bench grinder here. This was my dad's for years. It's got to be old because it's not 60 hertz, it's 60 cycles. But I went ahead and ground that off, and then this is the inner sleeve of that bearing, so I'm going to grind that off now. Now, the problem I have is I'm pretty sure last time I did this, I had to go get a set of mics from my father-in-law to measure what the bearing was supposed to be. But I think if I take the old pieces out to Tractor Supply, I'll match it up again, because there wasn't a whole lot of different sizes, and this was a metric-sized bearing. It was something like 50 millimeters on the outside, 20 on the inside or something. So I think I'll be able, if I take the pieces out, match it up okay. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my trusty bench grinder here. I got one inside, got a surge protector so that I can run my fan and my bench grinder. And this is running off the little blue generator right now, because the inverter does not have enough power to turn over this bench grinder. So you'll hear it kick up out there probably. And then what I do is it bogs down, so I turn it off for a minute, let it stabilize, and then kick it in again. And once it kicks up to full speed, it'll be fine. Alright, I'm going to grind this off of here, and I will be back with you. So I have gone ahead and gotten that sleeve now off of this shaft of the head. You know, I did as minimal amount of damage to it as I really could, but you know, it's not perfect. Plus, I did this one other time, but last time I did, I think I did more damage than this time, but should still be enough on there to hold the new bearing on. And you know, we'll go get that new bearing, and then basically, I think last time I just took a socket and hammered it down on there real good. I think I put something under the actual steel part of this rather than pounding down on that plastic fan. But now I'll head out to Tractor Supply and see if I can find the bearing, and then we'll see if we can get this sucker back together and making some electricity. Alright, just got back from my favorite store, Tractor Supply. I got the bearing. This is a 15 millimeter bore bearing, which I think the inside of this is 15 millimeters. I want to say the outside's 25 from last time I mic'd one of these, but I can't remember for sure. But this is the only size they had that had the right bore in metric. They had a 17 millimeter bore, was the only other metric size they had. Everything else was standard. So I know this has got to be the right one. So I'm going to put that back on here. I'm going to put a bolt in the bottom with some washers to hold that up off the ground so I'm not hammering on this plastic fan. And we'll tap this back in here. The interesting thing is, I did go look in my manual on this generator where they list all the parts. They do not sell the bearings separately. You have to buy this whole new middle part. So, knowing that this is a 15 millimeter, and this generator is similar to Champion and a whole bunch of other ones, that can save you some money if you got to replace one of these bearings. You don't have to replace this whole middle part. And what I'm going to do is take some of this gasket sealant, put a few dabs on the outside of this bearing, just so that that can't spin in the housing, because it doesn't fit in there super snug. And, you know, I don't want the outside of that spinning and getting worn down. But yeah, this bearing it turns smooth as silk compared to that other one, which was kind of grindy and just it felt dry. So I'm sure it was heating up. Now this has got a dust shield right here. It's a sealed bearing. Now, from taking the old one out, I can pop this little sleeve out and see the bearings inside. It still holds together fine. So what I may do is just take this cover off before I reassemble it, and then I can reach in there with some grease every so often and put some grease in them ball bearings. Hopefully help keep it from failing. I mean, really, you know, I guess that other bearing went through some work. You know, I run that generator hard through a couple of power outages after I replaced that bearing, and it's been about 6 years since I replaced it. And I know the one night I ran that engine full open throttle as hard as it would run to power a window air conditioner and a couple of lights because we were really hot. And I ran it all night, ran the air conditioner. So, I mean, yeah, it gets hot. That generator head gets hot. You know, it puts a lot of stress on that bearing. And I think it probably just needs to be, you need to be able to put some grease on it every so often. Yeah, and what I'm thinking I might do is I got some big round washers that might cover this when I put that bolt in. So I don't know if I put the washer of this whole thing, it might stop the middle from being able to turn right though. But if I could come up with a way to kind of cover that so keep the dirt out of it and then be able to grease it would be ideal. And then also, while I've got this generator head off, is the perfect time to go ahead and drill out these holes and put in the new standard long bolts I've got and get rid of all that metric stuff. I think one of the reasons these bearings may have failed, it's just because those bolts are crap that hold that generator head together, and they're not holding it on there tight, and they start to come kind of loose, and it shifts a little bit, and then you got the bearing trying to work at an angle. So I'm going to fix that while I got it apart too. So I'll get this back on here and then I'll be back with you to show you how it's going. Okay, so I've got the bearing back on the shaft. It fits nice and tight. And what I did is I took on the bottom, well, I took it off of there now. I just put some washers on a bolt, put that up through the bottom to elevate that plastic fan up off of the floor. And then I just took this, I put a bolt through this socket that fits right on the kind of the end, that shaft of that bearing, and then I just hammered it down on there with the crescent wrench. Just tap it on nice and slow going. You know, it took me like 5 minutes. Tap it down there a little at a time. Don't hit it too hard. Don't want to break anything. And that all looks real good. And this actually has a little seam in it and some little holes. I think I could pick that out, lube this bearing, and then pop that back in. So that might kind of become part of my maintenance procedure on this every so often, just to make sure that that bearing stays good. Because it's not hard to get it on there, but trying to get it off is a freaking nightmare. The only way I found to do it is to grind through the outer sleeve of the bearing, get that off, get all the ball bearings out, and then grind through the inner sleeve of that bearing. I suppose you could try heating it with a torch, but my concern is that you might hit all this, you know, wiring and melt some stuff, and then you're screwed if you mess up that wiring. You got to buy a whole new rotor assembly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drill out the holes up there on that where the generator head goes, and these holes here, so that my other bolts will fit through. Perfect time to do it while I got this all apart anyway. Then I'll have good bolts. Everything will be nice and strong. I'm sorry about the noise. Got an airplane flying overhead, and people across the street are cutting a bunch of wood. Looks like they're doing some work on the house over there. But anyway, I'll be back with you when we get ready to reassemble all this. Okay folks, so here I got the generator back together. Here is the bolts that I put in with the nuts. I put a lock washer on each end all the way around. Put the cover back on. Everything's fastened. I put the front panel back on. I did start this once already, just to make sure before I did the video. But you know, basically pretty simple. I got a little 200 watt Mr. Personal heater thingy there. I don't think I need to choke it. Well, maybe I do. Alright, I'll go ahead and plug this in here. And that is running. We got 120 volts. So everything's good. I ran it for about 45 minutes. Gas tank, all the bolts are still tight. Everything looks good. I put it under a good load with the bench grinder and the fan and the heater, and seemed to handle everything just fine. So I think this guy, I'm going to go ahead and run the fuel bowl empty and put a little bit of the gasoline preservative stuff in here, the whatever you call it, the additive that keeps it from going bad, stabilizer, yeah, and put her away, and I think she'll be ready and good to go for the next power outage. Thanks.